My name is Sarah Newman. I was born and raised in a small town in Kansas, a place where everyone knew each other. Where secrets barely existed. My life had never been extraordinary. It followed a familiar, predictable rhythm. Mornings at the library, sorting through old books, helping kids with their school projects, evenings spent at home, resting in the quiet hum of a small-town existence. Everything was simple, uneventful. I never believed in God. To me, only tangible things were real, things I could touch, fix, or control. I had no faith in the unseen. And I certainly didn't believe in the power of prayers spoken into the void. My mother was different. After my father abandoned us, she clung to her faith as if it were the only thing keeping her standing. I still remember the long nights when she sat by the window, her frail hands clutching the Bible, whispering prayers into the darkness. To me, they were nothing more than empty words, futile hopes that could never change reality. I was nothing like her. I learned to stand on my own, to rely on no one. If a pipe burst, I grabbed a wrench and fixed it myself. If a light went out, I climbed the ladder and replaced the bulb. It wasn't pride, it was survival. Depending on others had only ever led to disappointment. But in a single moment, everything I thought I knew was shattered. That night was supposed to be like any other. A simple chore, replacing a burnt-out porch light, nothing unusual. Nothing significant. I had done it countless times before. With a sigh, I grabbed a fresh bulb, positioned the ladder beneath the porch, and climbed up without a second thought. The cool night air wrapped around me as I steadied myself. The town was quiet. The only sounds were the distant chirping of crickets and the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. I reached up, unscrewing the faulty bulb with ease. Just another task. Just another moment in my ordinary life. Then, everything changed. A sudden shift. A wobble. My foot slipped. Before I could react, the ladder lurched beneath me. For a fraction of a second, I thought I could regain balance. But gravity had already made its decision. My body tilted backward. My arms flailed uselessly. And I was falling. It happened in slow motion, like a scene from a movie. The sharp clang of the metal ladder crashing against the wooden porch echoed through the still night. The rush of air whistled past my ears. A brief moment of weightlessness. And then, impact. Pain. A sharp, electrifying agony surged through me as my head struck the unforgiving wood. It was as if my entire body had exploded in pain, every nerve screaming at once. But the worst part wasn't the pain. It was the silence that followed. A heavy, suffocating silence. I tried to move. Nothing. I tried to breathe. Nothing. My body felt foreign, detached, as if it no longer belonged to me. Then, the world faded. Somewhere in the distance, my neighbor, Jim, had been tending to his backyard when he heard the crash. The unnatural, bone-chilling sound of metal and flesh colliding with wood sent a spike of panic through him. He hesitated only for a moment before rushing toward my house, his heart pounding in his chest. What he found made his stomach drop. I was sprawled on the porch, motionless. My limbs were twisted at unnatural angles, my chest still. my skin unnervingly pale. The warm glow of the porch light, now flickering, cast eerie shadows over my lifeless form. "Sarah?" His voice wavered. No response. He stepped closer, reached out with shaking hands, and pressed his fingers against my neck. No pulse. My body was chilling fast. His own breath quickened as fear set in. With trembling hands, he fumbled for his phone and dialed 911. His voice cracked as he tried to form the words. "It's my neighbor, she's not breathing. She fell. She's not moving. Please, hurry." The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional, but Jim barely heard it over the pounding in his ears. He could only stare at my still form, willing me to take a breath, to twitch, to do something, but I remained silent, unmoving. Within minutes, though to Jim, it felt like hours, the wail of sirens pierced through the night. Red and blue lights flashed against the houses, washing the street in a chaotic glow. Paramedics rushed toward the porch, their movements swift, practiced. They checked for a pulse. Nothing. They tilted my head back, forced air into my lungs, started compressions. My body jerked under the force. But it wasn't enough. Clear. A jolt of electricity surged through my body as the defibrillator attempted to restart my heart. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. The paramedics exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations held in the space between hope and despair. One of them pressed 2 fingers against my wrist once more, just to be sure. Then, a deep breath, a voice, steady but resigned. Time of death, 11:47 p.m. I was dead. I was no longer in my body. One moment, I had been surrounded by the chaos of the hospital, doctors rushing, machines beeping, voices rising in urgency. The next, I was weightless, detached, floating near the ceiling, looking down at a sight I could hardly comprehend. My own body, lifeless, motionless. Doctors surrounded me, their faces tight with focus and concern. One pressed fingers against my wrist, shaking his head. Another checked the monitor. Someone shouted an order. A nurse pushed a syringe into my IV. But none of it felt real. I wasn't in pain anymore. I wasn't struggling to breathe. I wasn't bound by the weight of flesh and bone. Instead, I felt separate, like a spectator watching a play unfold from a distance, knowing I was somehow connected to it but unable to intervene. An eerie calm settled over me. Shouldn't I be panicking? Shouldn't I be fighting to wake up? Yet, there was no urge to return, no tether pulling me back. I simply existed, observing the scene below with a strange sense of detachment. Then, something shifted. The sounds of the hospital began to fade, as if someone was slowly turning down the volume of reality itself. The frantic beeping of machines became muffled. The voices of the doctors blurred into an indistinct hum. The bright fluorescent lights flickered. And then, darkness. Not just the absence of light, but a darkness so deep, so vast, that it swallowed everything. It wasn't empty. It wasn't peaceful. It was consuming. I wasn't floating anymore. I wasn't anywhere. The air, if there even was air, felt thick, suffocating, pressing in on me like unseen hands. My thoughts raced. Where was I? What was happening? I tried to move, but there was nothing to move. My body was gone. I was nothing more than awareness, an isolated consciousness in an endless void. And then, the voices came. At first, they were whispers, barely distinguishable from the silence. Then they grew louder, sharper, overlapping, echoing like endless ripples in a vast, empty canyon. You never believed. You rejected the truth. You thought you knew everything. Each word struck me like a blade, cutting deeper than any physical wound. There was no warmth, no compassion in those voices. Only accusation, judgment. I wanted to scream, to deny, to argue, to plead, but I had no voice, no mouth, no form, only awareness. A crushing realization swept over me. I had spent my entire life convinced that I was in control, that I didn't need faith, that the world was only what I could see, touch, and understand. But I had been wrong. And now, in this vast and endless darkness, I had never felt more powerless, more alone. Just when I thought I would be lost in the darkness forever, something changed. At first, it was barely there, a flicker, a speck of light in the infinite void. It was so small that if I had blinked, I might have missed it. But I didn't blink. I couldn't. The light grew, expanding outward, illuminating the space around me. It wasn't just light, it was alive. It didn't merely shine, it pulsed, radiating something I had never felt before. Warmth, power, love. It wasn't the cold, distant glow of a star or the harsh glare of a hospital lamp. It was something entirely different, something that reached inside of me, wrapping around the deepest parts of my soul. And then, I felt it pulling me in. I had no body, no weight, no form, but I was moving. Not falling this time, not being dragged into the abyss. This was different. The pull wasn't violent. It was gentle, yet undeniable, like an embrace from something far greater than myself. And then, I saw him. At first, he was just a silhouette within the light, a figure standing at the center of it all. But as I drew closer, the details became clearer. He was clothed in white, not fabric as I knew it, but something far more radiant, as if his very being was woven from light itself. His presence was overwhelming. It wasn't like meeting another person. It wasn't like anything I had ever experienced. Light poured from him, surrounding me, filling every empty space within me, dissolving the weight of fear, doubt, and everything I had ever carried. I had never believed in him. I had never prayed, never sought him, never even allowed myself to wonder if he was real. But now, standing in his presence, I knew he was more real than anything I had ever known. Then, he spoke. Sarah. It wasn't just a name. It wasn't just sound. It was something more. A vibration. A resonance that reached beyond my ears and straight into my soul. It was as if he had always known me. As if he had been waiting for me, calling to me even when I had refused to listen. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I felt small. I had spent my entire existence believing I was strong, independent, that I didn't need anyone, not God, not people, not love. I had built my life around control, around the idea that if I could do things myself, I would never have to depend on anyone. But here, In the presence of the one who had created me, I realized how blind I had been. Tears filled my eyes. I wanted to speak, to ask if I was dead, if this was real, if I could stay. But I didn't need to ask. I already knew the answer. You have a purpose. A purpose? I didn't understand, but before I could question him, everything around me changed. Suddenly, I wasn't standing before him anymore. I was watching, but not through my own eyes. I saw my life, not the way I had remembered it, not the way I had justified it to myself. I saw it through truth. I saw the moments where I had hurt others, not just in words or actions, but in indifference. The times I could have offered kindness but chose silence instead. The moments when I had ignored the pain of those around me because it was easier to look away. I saw the opportunities I had missed, the love I had rejected, the people I had pushed aside, the chances I had been given to make a difference but had chosen not to. I saw him, reaching for me, calling me, placing people and moments in my life to draw me closer to him. And each time, I had turned away. I had spent my entire life convinced that faith was for the weak, that God was just a story, that I didn't need him. But now, faced with the undeniable truth, I realized something that shattered everything I had built my life upon. I had been running from the very thing I had always needed most. My knees buckled. I fell, not physically, because I wasn't sure I even had a body in this place, but in spirit. The weight of everything I had seen was too much to bear. You must tell them. The words echoed through me, reverberating in every part of my being. They weren't just a suggestion. They were a command, a calling. I looked up at him, my heart breaking. I didn't want to leave. Not now. Not after feeling this love, this peace, this belonging that I had never known in my earthly life. I wanted to stay in this place, in this presence, forever. But I knew I couldn't. Something was pulling me back. Not like before. Not like the fall into the darkness. This time, it was different. I felt my connection to this place weakening. The light started to fade. His figure grew distant. I wanted to reach for him, to ask for more time. But I couldn't. In his eyes, one last message. Tell them. And then, everything went dark. I gasped, sucking in a sharp breath as cold air flooded my lungs, shocking them back into motion. My body convulsed with the sudden return of sensation. Pain crashed over me like a tidal wave, overwhelming and absolute. My chest ached as if something heavy had been pressing down on it. My limbs felt like they were filled with lead, and my head throbbed with a sharp, pulsing agony, as if it had been struck by lightning. The blinding fluorescent lights above me seared into my vision, and for a moment, I couldn't comprehend where I was or what had just happened. Then, the sounds came rushing back, the erratic beeping of machines, hurried footsteps, voices filled with disbelief and urgency. The air was thick with panic and confusion. "She's back." A nurse stumbled backward, her face pale, her breath coming in sharp gasps as she pressed a trembling hand to her chest. The blood drained from her face, leaving her frozen in shock. A doctor rushed toward me, his expression shifting between alarm and something deeper, something bordering on awe. "Check her vitals again," he barked. his voice tense with disbelief. Another nurse fumbled with the monitors, her hands unsteady as she tried to confirm what her own eyes were struggling to believe. I heard the hurried shuffle of feet as more staff flooded into the room. Drawn by the impossible, I had been gone for 8 minutes. No pulse, no heartbeat, no brain activity. Yet, here I was, breathing, conscious, alive. The days that followed were a blur of medical tests, whispered conversations, and disbelieving glances. Doctors examined me over and over, their brows furrowed as they combed through my charts, trying to find something, anything, to explain what had happened. Patients don't just come back to life after 8 minutes of clinical death. Not without severe consequences. Those who had survived shorter periods of oxygen deprivation often woke up with brain damage, memory loss, or permanent neurological impairment. But I was fine, more than fine. Late at night, when they thought I was asleep, I heard them murmuring outside my hospital room. "It doesn't make sense," one doctor whispered. "There should be some kind of brain damage. No oxygen for that long, there has to be a complication." Another said, his voice laced with disbelief. But there wasn't. They ran test after test, searching for an answer that science couldn't provide them. I already had one, because I knew what had happened. I knew where I had been. I had seen something beyond this world. I had stood before Jesus Christ, and He had sent me back with a purpose. At first, I kept it to myself. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything over and over again in my mind. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a dream. It was more real than anything I had ever known. But how could I explain that to people who had never seen what I had? How could I make them understand? I had spent my entire life rejecting faith, scoffing at the idea of God. And now, after years of disbelief, I was supposed to stand before the world and tell them heaven was real? That Jesus had spoken to me? I didn't know if I had the courage. The first time I tried to explain, I saw the polite smiles, the forced nods. It must have been the trauma. Someone suggested gently, "The brain does strange things in distress." Another murmured, "I've read about this before. It's a common phenomenon in near-death experiences." Even a doctor, despite his own confusion over my survival, rationalized it as a neurological response. "The mind is powerful," he said, almost as if he were trying to convince himself as much as me. It could have been a hallucination triggered by oxygen deprivation. They all had their explanations. Science had its theories, but none of them were true. Because I had been there. I had seen the darkness. I had felt the suffocating emptiness of a life without God. The despair. The weight of every moment I had rejected Him. Every time I had ignored His voice calling out to me. And then, when I thought all was lost, I had seen the light. I had stood before the one I never believed in. And He had spoken my name. I had been shown my life, every mistake. Every moment I had chosen selfishness over kindness, doubt over faith. I had been stripped of every excuse, every justification, left only with the undeniable truth. And then He had given me a mission. Tell them, could I? Could I really stand before the world and share what I had seen? I wasn't naive. I knew what would happen. People would talk. They would whisper behind my back, shake their heads, call me delusional. Friends who had known me as the skeptic, the logical thinker, would laugh and say I had been brainwashed by fear. They would insist that I had let my emotions, my trauma, manipulate me. For a while, I considered keeping it to myself. It would have been easier to let people believe their comfortable explanations. Easier to stay silent than to risk humiliation. But then, I thought of the light, I thought of his voice. I thought of the overwhelming love that had surrounded me in that place. The way it had filled every empty space inside me. The way it had healed me in ways I never even realized I was broken. And I realized something. I didn't care. I wasn't afraid anymore. The truth was greater than my fear. The world needed to hear this. Because there were others just like me. Lost in their doubt. Convinced they had it all figured out. People who thought faith was for the weak. Who thought they didn't need God. People who had built walls around their hearts. Just as I had. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that Jesus had sent me back for them. I had been given a second chance. And I wasn't going to waste it. This wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. Heavenly Father, I come before you in awe of your mercy. Overwhelmed by the love that I once rejected but now embrace with all my heart. You have shown me the depths of my own blindness. The weight of a life lived apart from you. And the unfathomable grace that called me back even when I didn't deserve it. Lord, I thank you for the breath in my lungs, for the second chance you have given me, for the purpose you have placed upon my life. I am not here by accident. You have chosen me, rescued me, and sent me back for a reason. Father, I surrender everything to you. My fears, my doubts, my need for control, I lay them all at your feet. I know that the path ahead will not be easy. That the world may mock me, reject me, and dismiss my testimony as mere imagination. But I do not fear. Because I know the truth. I have seen the darkness. And I have seen the light. I have stood in the presence of Jesus. And I cannot remain silent. Lord, give me strength when I feel weak. Give me boldness when I am afraid. Give me the words to speak when my voice trembles. Let me not be ashamed of the gospel. For I now know that it is the power of salvation for those who believe. Open the hearts of those who hear my story. Lord, prepare them to receive your truth, to recognize your presence, to understand that you are real, alive, and calling out to them just as you called out to me. I pray for those who, like I once was, are lost in doubt, those who think they don't need you, those who carry wounds so deep that they have shut their hearts to you. Break through their walls, Lord, show them that your love is greater than their pain, greater than their past, greater than anything this world can offer. Let them see the light as I have seen it. Jesus, I place my life in your hands. Guide me, shape me, use me for your glory. Let my life be a testimony of your goodness, a reflection of your mercy, and a vessel for your truth. I am no longer my own. I belong to you. Whatever you ask of me, I will do. Wherever you lead me, I will go. Thank you, Lord, for your patience, for your forgiveness, for never giving up on me. May I never waste the gift you have given me. May I always proclaim your name with boldness and love. I praise you. I worship you. I trust you. In the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. To those who are searching, to those who are skeptical, and to those who believe they have all the time in the world, I urge you. Listen, I was like you once. I lived my life believing only in what I could see, touch, and control. I thought faith was for the weak, a comforting illusion created by those who feared death. I convinced myself that I didn't need God, that life was mine to shape, and that nothing existed beyond the here and now. But then, everything changed. I stood at the threshold of eternity. I felt the weight of my choices, the reality of a world beyond this one, and the undeniable truth that I had spent my whole life rejecting. Heaven is real, hell is real, and Jesus Christ is not just a figure from ancient texts, he is alive. He sees you, and he is calling out to you even now. I was given a second chance. Not because I earned it, not because I was worthy, but because of his unfathomable mercy. And I was sent back with a mission: to tell you the truth before it's too late. The truth is this: none of us are promised tomorrow. We plan for the future. We set goals. We live as if life will stretch on forever. But the reality is that our time can be taken in an instant. One moment, I was alive and strong; the next, I was lifeless, my soul separated from my body. And in that moment, I faced something far greater than anything I had ever known. When you take your last breath, when your heart beats for the final time, nothing you've built in this world will matter. Your achievements, your possessions, your reputation, none of it will go with you. The only thing that will matter is whether you accepted or rejected the truth. And here is the truth: you were created for eternity. You were never meant to wander through life disconnected from the one who made you. The longing you feel inside, the emptiness that nothing in this world seems to fill, it is because your soul was made for something more. That something more is Jesus. Right now, at this very moment, you have a choice. You can continue living as if this world is all there is, ignoring the quiet pull in your heart, silencing the questions that whisper to you in the stillness of the night. Or you can turn to the one who has been waiting for you, who loves you beyond anything you can comprehend, who gave his life so that you could live forever. Please, don't wait until it's too late. Don't wait until you stand at the edge of eternity to realize the truth. Jesus is reaching for you now. His arms are open. His love is real. His mercy is greater than your past, greater than your doubts, greater than every mistake you've ever made. All you have to do is surrender. Don't let fear or pride keep you from the greatest gift ever offered. Don't let another day slip by without knowing the one who gave everything for you. I have told you what I was sent back to say. Now, the choice is yours. Choose him while you still have the chance. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing these powerful stories and creating a space for open, heartfelt conversations. Click the notification bell so you're always updated when we post new content. Together, let's explore the unseen, celebrate the miraculous, and inspire one another to live with love, faith, and wonder.